So a year ago on the channel, I took a look at what was the best match of every WrestleMania, and now I'm here a year later once again to discuss the flip side of things. While I definitely did enjoy my WrestleMania binge last year, having to see all these classic matches, classic moments, made me realize just how many bad matches we've gotten over the years. Trying to narrow it all down to just one match per show, especially for certain shows, wasn't easy. And then trying to find 40 different ways to say this match sucks is definitely not easy. So strap in, folks, because now we're in for some bullshit. Ladies and gentlemen, it's your boy Mo, if you don't already know, and this is the worst match of every WrestleMania. Let's do this damn thing. I got a lot of respect for WrestleMania 1 because while, yeah, it's really just a glorified house show with celebrities everywhere, it's just too important to wrestling history for me to hate on too much. And at least the crowd was into most of these matches, but then I have to emphasize most because we had one match on the card where someone who was at ringside was more over than either of the wrestlers in the ring. David Sammartino versus Brutus Beefcake was a painfully slow match, man. It felt like the longest 12 minutes of my life. Well, that's until I watched another WrestleMania that we'll get to. And the only time the crowd really popped during this entire match was when David's dad, Bruno, started throwing hands himself, which makes sense since they're an MSG, but then it all ends in a double DQ. Come on, man. Just a colossal waste of time on the show that was originally supposed to be called The Colossal Tussle. Thank God for Howard Finkel, bro. If anyone watching this attended WrestleMania 2, first of all, shout out to you. Second of all, I'm so sorry. The three-city concept was just never gonna work. I mean, every city just got a bunch of duds left and right. But if you ask me, no city suffered more than LA. After having to watch the first 2/3 of the show on a big screen, they got treated to Adrian Adonis versus Uncle Elmer. My lord. 3 minutes that they will unfortunately never get back. Now, I'll give Adonis credit because he was really trying to make something out of this because he was really bumping around like a madman. But Uncle Elmer was just moving in slow motion with every damn move. I mean, for fuck's sake, the man got gassed after throwing one punch. Why was this on my screen? Okay, look, saying Vince McMahon is a weirdo sounds extremely redundant, but this needs to be said. What was it with him and making jokes out of little people like they not just regular human beings? I get they're smaller than us, but god damn. The 6-man tag on the show was such idiocy, and the fact that King Kong Bundy got disqualified because he hit a regular wrestling move on a little person. Like, are we serious? And mind you, this was probably the most memorable match of Hillbilly Jim's Hall of Fame career. I mean, no disrespect, but this is what you did? Well, at least the match was short, not that long. Some people would make the case that Hogan versus Andre from WrestleMania 3 should have been on this list, but that match to me is too iconic to even try and slander. But their rematch from WrestleMania 4 can definitely get all the smoke. First of all, I hate the 14-man tournament concept because where's the logic in that? Just have 8 or 16, preferably 8. And this first round match was even more slow and boring than the year before. And then there's the finish where Hogan hits Andre with a steel chair and they both get disqualified? First of all, what was it with these early WrestleManias and all these disqualifications? And even then, in any other match, Hogan would be DQ'd and Andre would advance in this godforsaken tournament, right? But nah, because almost nothing makes sense on this show, they're both out. Boy, I hate WrestleMania 4. At least Savage won in the end, though. Watching these older WrestleManias made me realize just how important the main events were to these shows. Because a lot of times they were carrying a card of mostly nothing matches that would feel out of place on any other big show, let alone the biggest show of the year. And they're usually short matches, but a lot of these are just hard to watch. But very few come close to how buns the Fabulous Rougeaus versus the Bushwhackers was. I get they were trying to be funny, but even the crowd was more dead than I was. Because there's almost nothing more awkward than bad comedy. And I also never really understood the appeal of the Bushwhackers, but maybe that's just me. And yes, old heads, I've seen their work before WWF. They were good for their time, but I'm specifically talking about their WWF work, not the sheep herders. Put the pitchforks down, please. Once again, huge main event, but a lackluster undercard. Not a single match from the show aside from the main event went past 12 minutes. So the bad matches were quick, but none of them were as painful as Dino Bravo versus Jim Duggan. First of all, Jim Duggan trying to start a USA chant in Canada against a Canadian opponent. You good, bro? And the in-ring work was just dull and sloppy. Neither guy really benefited from this. Duggan wins after a weak-looking 2x4 shot to then get destroyed by Earthquake after the bell. I guess at least someone looked good from this, but I could have done without this entire match. If you've seen my dumbest match stipulations video, you'll know that I don't like blindfold matches at all. Like, bro, why are they fighting to prove which one of them has better echolocation? Especially considering how long Jake the Snake and Rick Martel had been feuding. You mean to tell me this is the stipulation y'all settled on? Granted, the stipulation did fit the story of Martel blinding Jake, and I also get that it's a comedy type of match, and if this entertained you, more power to you. But personally, I just can't get jiggy with this shit. Especially when Jake the Snake literally put his finger through the eye hole on camera. So now I have to watch these two fools stumble around each other pretending like they can't see. Shit, I wish I didn't have to see this at all. I will never understand WWF fumbling Hogan versus Flair for WrestleMania 8. They had a wide open layup. Instead, they took a full court shot and hit a fan right in the fucking face and broke their nose. Especially considering the match we got instead as our main event. Hogan versus Sid was legit worse than it sounds on paper. This was actually the longest 12 minutes of my life. Also, Sid was definitely the babyface in my eyes, and no, not because of real life situations, but because Hogan essentially pouted because Sid threw him out the Rumble, as if Sid broke the rules or something. And the ending for this match is such a mess, with Papa Shango missing his cue, so Sid had to kick out of the leg drop. And then imagine a WrestleMania main event ending in a DQ in the modern day. The Twitter crash out would have been insane. The Warrior return at the end legit saves this from being the worst WrestleMania ending ever. No bullshit. I think it's only fitting that the worst WrestleMania of all time just so happened to feature arguably the worst WrestleMania match of all time. I mean, what can I say about this abomination that hasn't been said before? There's a reason WWE ignores this match when they talk about the streak. I usually dunk on Great Khali a lot, and we'll get to him later, but nah. Giant Gonzalez is the most immobile man I've ever seen wrestle. And that suit is just disturbing. And this match was so bad that I legit stopped the show to go watch Taker and Shawn at WrestleMania 25 to clear my mind. I mean, look how he sold this punch. Are we dead ass right now? And the fact that this isn't the only match that they had against each other the very same year is actually insanity. I will say though, Gonzalez ragdolling a referee after the match was more entertaining than anything that actually happened in the match. Still though, Undertaker deserves so much better than this. Man, looking back, you gotta feel for Lex Luger a little bit. First, he doesn't win the title at SummerSlam. Instead, he got a pity parade. And then he has to share his Rumble win just to get thrown in the middle of the show in a match mostly made up of rest holds. And then the match ends in a DQ for Luger to then have to come out at the end of the night to celebrate Bret's title win. Like, good Lord, poor guy. But hey, at least Luger's going in the Hall of Fame this year, right? About damn time, by the way. I think it goes without saying that The Undertaker's streak had a really rough beginning, and it wasn't even his fault. They just kept giving him opponents that you wouldn't expect good matches out of. No doubt a legend, but King Kong Bundy? Really? Really? This was slower than molasses. Bundy could barely move. The crowd was louder for Undertaker taking back the urn from Ted DiBiase than any of the offense in the ring. Hell, this match was so whack, it doesn't even end with the tombstone, but with the jumping clothesline. That is a damning indictment on this match just by itself. Poor Undertaker, man. I mean, Ultimate Warrior versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley has to be the only answer for this, right? It was a 6-match card, and there was good to be found in all of them except this one. There isn't even much to say about it. The match was a minute and a half. Warrior clearly didn't care, and Triple H looked like an idiot. But, I mean, I doubt he's losing sleep over this. After all, he went from this to having one of the greatest careers in wrestling history. Plus, he's definitely made up for it over the years with the amount of overly long matches he's had at WrestleMania, so I think it evens out. Yo, please get Brett and Austin a chiropractor. The carry job they did for this show is actually diabolical. Rest in peace to Sid, but the fact that he has 2 WrestleMania matches in his career and both of them are bottom 10 WrestleMania main events of all time is actually nuts to me. And I love Bret Hart, but when a promo of his is more entertaining than anything the actual wrestlers are doing in the ring, you got problems. And speaking of Bret, to think that this was supposed to be him versus Shawn Michaels in a rematch from the year before, but nah, because this fool misplaced his damn grin, I had to watch a 20-minute Psycho Sid match. Thanks a lot, Shawn. Much appreciated. Actually, now that I think about it, thank you, Shawn, because Bret versus Austin was wrestling perfection. I don't know about y'all, but personally, I would argue that a WrestleMania opener is almost just as important as its main event, because your opener should really set the tone for the audience to get invested into the show. But when you start the biggest show of the year with an awkward-looking 15-team battle royal, you didn't exactly set yourself up for success. To be fair, I'm not a big fan of battle royals anyway. They just always look like a mess, and this was no different. On top of that, the rule of if one member of a team gets thrown out, the whole team is eliminated just made this even more clunky. But in fairness, it did what it needed to do, which was get a huge pop for Legion of Doom, so there's that. You just know we're deep in the Attitude Era when a man got hung seemingly to death on a WrestleMania, and not only do the crowd move on quickly, but so does everyone else on the show. But even before that, Undertaker versus Big Boss Man might have been the worst Hell in a Cell match of all time before a certain visionary and fiend blew that out of the water. First of all, heel versus heel wasn't gonna work for them, and the chemistry just wasn't there for them at all, and neither was the crowd. And somehow, some way, this still isn't the last match of the streak on this list.
California.
Man, as great as the Attitude Era was, the WrestleManias for the most part just didn't hit, with WrestleMania 2000 being the worst of that bunch. The fact that the only singles match on the card just so happened to be the worst match on the show. Terry Runnels versus the Cat in a cat fight, which was basically a one-on-one battle royal. WrestleMania, baby. Woo. Honestly, just imagine a typical Attitude Era women's segment. That's exactly what we got here. Yes, even the best WrestleMania of all time had a couple misses in there, and look, by default, I had to give it to Chyna and Ivory, but I can't really slander it that much. The match really did what it needed to do. I mean, in storyline, Ivory injured Chyna's neck, so Chyna squashing her to win the women's title made all the sense in the world to me. WrestleMania 18 is a strange show because aside from one match, there's nothing that stands out too much. Even the bad stuff was just there. And that goes for the hardcore title match between Maven and Goldust. It was really a small part of the running story throughout the show for the hardcore title that just kind of ended abruptly when it was just starting to get good. Not a match that really hurt the show, but it was pretty forgettable. Finally, we got the last match for the streak on this list. But even then, it's nowhere near as bad as the other ones I named already. Goes to show how good WrestleMania 19 is, honestly. But for me, looking at it, it's kind of just like, really? Big Show and A-Train is the best you had for Undertaker at WrestleMania? Especially after he had a pretty damn good 2002? And to think Nathan Jones was actually supposed to team with Undertaker. Good lord. At least it's the last time we'll see him on this list. Well, when you have a match where the most popular person in the ring is the referee, that's the beginning of your problems right there. But hey, I don't exactly hate Brock versus Goldberg from this show. Don't get me wrong, it's still probably a bottom 5 WrestleMania match of all time. But that crowd helps make it way more tolerable than it should be. It's almost one of those it's so bad that it's good situations. But I say almost because man was it apparent just how much Brock and Goldberg did not care. Instead of a good 5-minute car crash for both of them to go out on, We got a 13-minute snooze fest where they were just doing moves to make sure that they got paid. I've seen better effort from these two while playing Here Comes the Pain, and the MSG crowd was not helping them find any reason to give a damn, but they made up for it 13 years later, so I can't be too mad. For this show, I went back and forth between Christy versus Trish and Big Show versus Akibono, and well, at least one of these matches featured two actual pro wrestlers. I mean, who asked for a sumo match at WrestleMania? This ain't the type of wrestling I came here for. Also, I could have went the rest of my life without seeing Big Show's bare ass on my screen, and unfortunately, it wasn't the last time. WrestleMania 22 to me is a very underrated show, but I would not be surprised if Booker T and Sharmell versus the Boogeyman was the reason why people don't talk about it as much as they should. Genuinely, what was the point of this? Apparently Boogeyman was hurt going into the show, so he didn't really take any bumps, and even when he's healthy, not the best in-ring performer. Love Sharmell as a manager, but she was not going to have a good match. And Booker T just deserves so much better than having to watch his wife get kissed by a man with worms in his mouth. Yeah, never really liked the Boogeyman, to be honest. I almost had a hard time believing WWE looked at the WrestleMania 23 card and decided that what it needed was the immobile man that was the Great Khali going up against Kane. But then I remembered who was in charge at the time and the belief was restored. Honestly, just imagine the match in your head. Got it? Now multiply that level of ass by 10 because that's how bad Khali versus Kane was. If you ask me, Paul Heyman still owes Vince McMahon an ass whooping for what he did to ECW. And I don't care what y'all tell me, I refuse to count the ECW championship as a WWE world title. For many reasons, but the type of representation it got on WrestleManias was just ridiculous. The first time the champion didn't even defend his title, and then the second time, Chavo Guerrero defends it in an 11-second squash match to lose it to Kane. Also, Kane, ECW champion, that don't even sound right. Another WrestleMania and another clusterfuck of a Battle Royal. The Miss WrestleMania Battle Royal has been ripped to shreds many times over the years, and for good reason. It was just an eyesore of a match with people just getting thrown out with no importance to it. There were legends in the ring that we didn't even realize were in the match until they got thrown out. Just for this whole thing to end with the winner being Santino Marella in a fucking skirt. Women's wrestling, ladies and gentlemen. No wonder Trish declined this shit. If I'm being honest, had Brett and Vince only gone about 5 minutes where Brett and his family just beat him up, I don't think it would be as hated as it deserves to be. I mean, the story was there for that to work, but instead they doubled up on the time and dragged this shit out for no reason. The whole double cross thing with the Hearts and Vince was goofy. Brett at this point couldn't really take bumps no more, so Vince got literally no offense. So basically, instead of grandpa graps, we had grandpas that needed to take naps. Okay, as bad as that joke was, it can't be as bad as this match was. Right? Bitch! Oh! I swear, I don't think I will ever hate a show more than I hate WrestleMania 27. The one time my mom lets me buy a pay-per-view on her dime, I get Snooki wrestling, a reminder of the Core's existence, The Rock yelling at a laptop, and worst of all, Michael Cole and Jerry Lawler wasting 30 minutes of my life. This to me is a worse version of Brett versus Vince because at least that had a fucking story that people actually cared about. This was a match between two commentators at WrestleMania. Okay, look, let me calm down real quick. I gotta acknowledge, Jerry Lawler is a wrestling legend and was dope in his prime. But he was 61 years old at this point. He wasn't gonna carry nobody to a decent match, especially Michael Cole of all people. And do not get me started on how the decision was reversed, so this feud had to continue for a whole nother month. I refuse to watch this again. A world title match on a WrestleMania lasted 18 seconds. What more of an explanation do we need? If they're not going to give the match much time, why should I? And to think people used to wrestle in freaking wars for the big gold, bro. Honestly, imagine they had their 2 out of 3 falls match on this show instead of what this was. We'd be having different conversations about this show, no doubt. As we know, this turned out to be a blessing in disguise for old D-Bry, but in the moment, this was asinine.
Hey yo, Now, check this out.
Ryback versus Mark Henry doesn't really sound like the most appealing in-ring match on paper, but maybe if this had been Hall of Pain Mark Henry versus undefeated Ryback, there'd probably be more interest. But no, it's just a random match between two guys whose momentum had pretty much halted at this point, with a flat crowd and even flatter finish, where Mark Henry just kind of falls on top of Ryback for the win. A weird match that sadly fit on a weird and boring WrestleMania.
Hey, we're gonna celebrate, yeah, yeah, yeah.
You gotta feel for the ladies on this show. They all just got lumped in this weird Divas Invitational match where almost nobody shined. But then you also have to consider the fact that this was the match that followed the streak being broken. So obviously the crowd didn't have exactly much to give either. Also, did y'all know that this was the only time that the Divas title was defended on a WrestleMania? Not all that shocking considering the treatment of women's wrestling at the time, but still kinda crazy. WrestleMania 31 is such a fun overall show that the worst match on that card is not even a bad match. It was really just a meaningless women's tag match between AJ Lee and Paige versus the Bellas that got like 7 minutes. Nothing's exactly wrong with the match, it was just kind of a Monday Night Raw type of match that took place on a card full of fun moments and fun matches. Sucks that it was AJ's last pay-per-view match though. Side note, this entry is going to be longer than the actual match. You know, I considered putting Triple H versus Roman Reigns on this list, and while that was a terrible main event, The Rock versus Eric Rowan was the dumbest part of a pointless segment that was already going too damn long on a show that was already too damn long. Also, you mean to tell me The Rock just casually walks around with his wrestling gear underneath his clothes, bro? But man, this made the Wyatts just look so stupid. I mean, 6 seconds? Really? One My Via South and that's it? The John Cena return was nice to see, but this segment did not need to go as long as it did for that to happen.
Give me the green light, cause I'm ready to go. Let's have a good.
I remember being so hyped for WrestleMania 33, SmackDown especially at this time was such great TV, and I was really enjoying the Bray Wyatt and Randy Orton story, but their match at WrestleMania 33 was a straight up atrocity. Why am I looking at a projection of insects in a WWE title match? Can we get any more unserious? And to think this was the end of Bray Wyatt's 1-month reign for the title to then be passed off to Jinder Mahal a month after that. I hate it here.
Hey, we're gonna celebrate, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, Roman Reigns has dodged this list twice, but not this time. Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar has to be the most annoying WrestleMania main event I've ever seen in my life. 6 F5s, bro? You mean to tell me it only took 3 to break the Undertaker streak after all them years, but it takes 6 to beat Roman Reigns? Not the tribal chief, but the big dog Roman Reigns. I think the biggest issue with this match is that you had the 2 most disliked wrestlers in the company at the time in this main event that nobody asked for, in a time period where fans had no problem with hijacking matches, and they did exactly that. And to make it worse, Brock won in the end, so we had to endure 4 more months of this fucking feud. Man, WrestleMania 34 is such a disappointment.
I'm ready for the bright lights. I'm ready for the highlights.
WWE should be ashamed of themselves for making me sit through this long-ass show, and right when I'm tired, they crush my heart with Kurt Angle versus Baron Corbin. Considering how other legends went out on their WrestleMania careers, this is all you had in mind for Kurt freaking Angle? Even Kurt has been on record to say he would have preferred something else. And the sad thing is, that something else was doing something else on the same damn show. John Cena was right there. How do you fumble? You know what? Let's just move on before I have a stroke. I do have an appreciation for WrestleMania 36 despite how weird it was. WWE did try their best to try and distract us from what was going on in these times, but I don't think Elias versus King Corbin was going to do the trick. I might have made the problems more apparent. I mean, this match on paper would be a channel changer no matter what show it's on, even with the crowd there. You think any of us want to see this without one at a WrestleMania? To be fair though, the crowd probably would have been making the same amount of noise anyways. Man, I'm glad we're out of those times. I hate to have Bray Wyatt's last WrestleMania match on the list, but I can't justify anything else here. The story with The Fiend and Randy Orton with Alexa Bliss was just weird, and the match was even more weird. The red lighting was back for some reason. This match got like 5 minutes, and the finish that came out of absolutely nowhere where Alexa's on top of the toy box with black goo dripping down her face, so Bray loses to 1 RKO. And the fact that we'd never see The Fiend again and none of this is ever really explained bothers my soul. Man, life is cruel, isn't it? Man, Vince couldn't just leave it alone. We already saw enough bullshit from him at Mania 26. What made him think we want to see him in another match 12 years later? At least the match with Pat McAfee was short, but man was this unnecessary. And the fact that the fans chanted, "You still got it" at this man, he never had it. What are y'all talking about? Thank God we never have to see Vince quote unquote wrestle again. At least the stunner was funny though. 2 years in a row of an impromptu Pat McAfee WrestleMania match that felt like a complete waste of time. Love Pat, but did we really need this match between him and Miz? Poor Miz, by the way. Man's got jobbed out back-to-back nights. And before someone tries to tell me this shouldn't count, well, the bell rang. Not much I can really do about that. And I know some folks would say I should have put Miz and Shane / Snoop Dogg on this list, but at least I laughed at that. When Snoop Dogg hit the people's elbow, to be more clear, I promise I was not laughing at Shane's injury. I may be an idiot, but I'm not an asshole. You know, I used to hate on the Young Bucks for their super kick parties, but after that super kick extravaganza we got at WrestleMania 40, I take it all back. And look, the IWC has done an amazing job of tearing Jimmy vs. Jay to shreds over the last year or so I won't go too in depth with this. However, I've seen a lot of folks call this the worst WrestleMania match of all time. Let's pump the brakes just a little bit. And don't get me wrong, the match is whack, but I personally would argue that most of the matches on this list are worse than that. Don't believe me? Well, maybe watch these matches so you can see the pain that I had to endure just for y'all. Okay, don't do that, all right? I love y'all too much, especially y'all that made it to the end. Much love. Please don't do that to yourselves. Don't go through that. But all jokes aside, that is the worst match of every WrestleMania, folks. Y'all let me know in the comments down below if y'all agree, disagree, what y'all think. If there's any changes y'all would make to the list, let me know all of that down below. I hope you enjoyed the video. I'll see you on the next one. Like, comment, share, subscribe if you enjoyed. I'm out of here. I'm gone.